I'm Roman Burrows with Geoprobe Service, and in this video we'll talk about fuel system care in the Kubota V2403 engine Tier 4 Stage 5, which appears in the 7822 DT, 6712 DT, and 3126 GT. In this video we'll talk about how to care for the fuel system, as well as change the fuel filters and bleed air out of the fuel system. Modern fuel systems are engineered with very tight tolerances, and they run at higher pressures than ever before. Because of this, clean fuel is very important. Always use ultra-low sulfur diesel. And in cold weather, we do recommend using a fuel additive, which can be bought at any auto parts store. When filling your tank, always use a screen of some sort. You can do so with a funnel or in your fuel can. This keeps larger debris out of your fuel tank. When you turn on the key, an electric fuel pump turns on, which pulls fuel out of the tank through a fuel water separator, through the pump, and then pushes it through a fuel canister filter, which then leads into a mechanical fuel pump on the engine. We recommend that you drain the fuel water separator every 50 hours. To do this, you're going to remove the electrical connector on the bottom of the separator and move it out of the way. Then you're going to take your catch pan and you're going to carefully unscrew the plastic connector, and it will drain into the pan. There's no need to remove the connector. Once it's done draining, go ahead and tighten the connector by hand. Be careful not to over-tighten. Then reattach the electrical plug. The plug only goes on one way. We recommend changing both the canister fuel filter and the water separator every 200 hours or every year, whichever comes first. In this video, we'll change the water separator as an example. Start by unplugging the electrical connector and draining the separator, just as we showed before. Once the canister on the separator is completely drained, you can remove the plastic plug on the bottom of the separator. Keep this, you'll use it on the new filter. You can unscrew the canister. If needed, you can use a filter wrench to unscrew the canister. Catch the fuel in a catch pan. When changing filters, always use OEM Kubota brand filters. When installing the new filter, you can lubricate the O-ring using clean fuel. Never pre-fill the filter. Now I'm ready to install it. Always install the filter by hand. Never tighten it with a filter wrench. It just needs to be snug enough not to leak. Now that I've installed my new canister for my separator, I'm going to install the old separator drain. Be careful with the plastic threads and do not over tighten it. It only needs to be tight enough not to leak. Then plug in the connector. At this point in the process, we would normally change the canister fuel filter, but for the purpose of this video, we'll skip that part. Anytime you introduce air into the fuel system, you need to bleed the air out, whether you're changing the filters or you've simply run out of fuel. That's the next step in the process. Now we'll show you how to bleed the air out of the fuel system. This is the fuel bleeder valve on the canister filter. I like to attach a hose on the bleeder so I have control of the fuel drain. I'm going to take my 10mm wrench and loosen the bleeder valve to open it. I only need to loosen it about one full turn. I have the other end of my hose running into a fuel can. Now that I'm ready to drain, I'm going to pump on the fuel priming bulb on the water separator until I see fuel come out the other end of the hose. I like to pump until I see the fuel run out clearly. Now that I have clear fuel running through my filter, I'll close the bleeder valve. And I can remove my hose. Next, I'll turn on the ignition to start the electric fuel pump. Now that I have the ignition key turned on, I can hear the electric fuel pump running. There's also a fuel priming bulb on the mechanical fuel pump. I can help prime it by pushing on this about 10 times. With either priming bulb, they may not become firm, so don't feel like you have to pump them until they become firm. Now that I've pumped her a few times, I'm going to try to start the engine. When cranking, never crank longer than 10 seconds. After about 10 seconds of cranking, always stop and give the starter a rest. This machine started on the first try. That may not be the case for you. You may have to repeat this process several times before the engine starts. And then when it starts, it may sound labored or bogged down or even die. In which case, just repeat the process until the engine runs smoothly. Then I recommend running the engine for about 5 minutes to make sure the fuel system is clear. For this demonstration, we used a 6712 DT. We also only changed the fuel water separator and we did not change the canister filter. Again, we recommend doing both at the same time, every 200 hours or every year, whichever comes first. On the 7822 DT and 3126 GT, the fuel water separator is located here next to the fuel fill. The canister filter is located underneath the radiator, right here. And the priming bulb on the engine is located inside the battery door on the side of the engine. If you have any questions about this process or other maintenance questions about your Geoprobe, call Geoprobe service.